Hi, it's Steph, and we are now at the end of October, and we have reached peak leaf changing season here in the Northeast, and I thought it was a great opportunity to go through and do the October garden tour. If you're new to my channel, I live and garden in Massachusetts, and here in New England we're really lucky to have beautiful fall foliage each year. The color of the leaves will depend largely on the temperature and the weather that year, but we're having a really good year. We're also lucky in the sense that here in my backyard, I'm surrounded by beautiful trees that are also experiencing really pretty color changes. There's a yellow one and some orange and red, gorgeous. But here in this new garden area, my husband and I have a collection of Japanese maples. And this one in particular is really stealing the show at the moment. This beauty is what is commonly known as the dancing peacock Japanese maple. And it has the most beautiful cherry red coloring in the fall. This is the second year in a row that this tree has had this gorgeous coloring. Now in the spring, it is just green, but it does get these little red, what looks to be earrings called samaras. And those are red and the leaves are green, which make a really pretty contrast. And then the tree is mostly green in the summer, but it really shines in the fall each year. In fact, this is the traditional Japanese maple leaf, like the bloodgood, and you can see how different the leaf shape is. So it's just a really interesting variety. Now, the sun is what's helping this tree change this vibrant shade of red, because if we have a leaf, for example, that is shaded, like right here, you can see that it's still green. And something I've noticed is that at dusk, just before it gets dark, it almost looks like it's glowing. This tree here to my left is another beauty. This is the Ariadne Japanese maple. And the beautiful thing about this tree is that it has a really pretty burnt orange color in the spring. Then it goes green for the summer. And then again, it starts to get that really pretty burnt orange color in the fall. And this tree has put on such wonderful growth in the last couple of years. It's really filling out beautifully. We're going to go through and take a look at the Japanese maples, the rest of the Japanese maples that I have planted in this area. And here in the corner, I have a really pretty one. In the spring, this Japanese maple actually looks pink. In fact, I'm realizing that most of my Japanese maples have better spring color than fall color. And that's just the case with my particular collection. So in the future, I'll be sure to add maybe more that have more fall color. But this one here in the spring looks pink. It's called Shiraz. It's also known as Geishas Gone Wild. And right now it mostly just looks red, but this has put on a lot of growth in the last couple of years. We bought this as a small 1 gallon Japanese maple. And going down the line here, this one here is called Mikawa Yatsubusa. And the Mikawa has a really pretty growth habit, as in that it looks stacked. Like the leaves almost look like they're stacked one on top of another. And this one has actually put on a lot of growth this year too. You can see all of the new growth coming up above the tree.
Yeah, and in the spring they look lime.
Yeah, it's true. And they get really vibrant new leaves that look lime, especially in spring. It's really pretty. Here we have a sister ghost. I actually have 3 trees from the ghost collection now, and the sister ghost here is really beautiful in the sense that it's a variegated tree. So in the spring, this tree almost looks white. You can see that it's green with some white reticulation or variegation. And this here is a fire glow. Now the fire glow is a really vibrant red. In the spring, when the sun comes through the leaves, it looks really fiery red. Right now it has more of a muted red coloring in burgundy as we head into fall, but this is also a really beautiful Japanese maple. Now, as we head out of the path, I do want to show you a tree that I have here on the side. It is a dogwood. And this dogwood is variegated. I had featured it in one of my garden tours, and it is really beautiful green and yellow. And now you can see where the yellow was, it's taking on a pink hue. So this dogwood has really beautiful fall coloring as well. It is either called celestial gold or there's another name for it, and I'm not quite sure what it is because it wasn't identified on the tag when I bought it, but I will flash the name on the screen of what I believe it to be. Really pretty dogwood. Okay, so we are going to look at a couple more of my maples in this garden area. We have a couple of things that I'm going to show you, starting with this Chinese fringe flower that Janie at Dig Plant Water Repeat had sent me in a plant exchange that we did over the summer. It is also getting some really pretty fall color with the red leaves. And this plant here is rated, the shrub, to a zone 7, and I'm in a zone 6, so I will have to offer it some winter protection to ensure that it makes it through the winter this year.
Didn't you buy that TP at Lowe's?
I did. I bought a TP at Lowe's. It's some kind of canvas, looks like a little tent that I will be putting on that shrub to protect it for the winter. Hopefully it just does enough to keep the wind off of it, because winter winds can be pretty harsh, and it'll keep it insulated enough. This here is another Japanese maple. This is a real beauty as well. In the spring, it has the most beautiful yellow coloring. This is a Jordan Japanese maple, and it is a full moon maple. It's a stunning one. Obviously right now it's starting to, lose its foliage, but it's a real pretty one. The lamb's ear never quits. The lamb's ear looks absolutely beautiful. This variety is called Helen von Steen, and it is a beautiful foliage perennial that just grows and grows, and it's really stunning. In the morning, it's been getting a little bit cooler, and when these have a little bit of morning dew on them, they almost look like a really vibrant blue. They're just beautiful. And here is the maple that we did the fall switcheroo on. This here is another one of the Ghost series, and this is called Purple Ghost. Now, it did have a little bit of insect damage this year because every spring they tend to get tent caterpillars in our garden anyway, and so we do have to treat them with BT. So I think that was what happened here. But now it's looking like it's liking its new spot. It hasn't dropped leaves yet, but I'm hopeful that in the coming years it's going to look really beautiful in this area. And my evergreen that I have here, which is a really gorgeous yellow, this is an golden oriental spruce, and the deer actually really like to go after this particular evergreen, so I do have to protect it. I either will put some netting around it or some of the spikes that I've shown in the past, or even just spraying it, because over winter the deer get really hungry, and I'm worried about the deer taking some bites out of this. But this is a beautiful evergreen. Nice and vibrant. And as we come across here, I planted this whipcord arborvitae here this season as well. Really funky looking little evergreen, and I really like it. Almost looks like a head of really wild hair. This tree here is George's favorite. This is an autumn moon, and while it doesn't look like much now, this is an absolutely stunning variety. This one has shades of gold and pink and orange. It's just gorgeous. So it's a really pretty focal point in the corner of this bed in this area here. And it flanks the right side of this garden space, on the right side of the walkway here. And on the left, we have one called Katsura. This Japanese maple in spring looks like a fireball. It is really vibrant in shades of orange and red and yellow. It's a stunning one, and it's actually put on quite a bit of growth. It's been planted here. This is its 3rd season. The lady's mantle that I started from seed with the winter sowing method has actually put on a good amount of growth. So this one here and this one there are the ones that I started from seed this year, the 2 smaller ones. But to be 1-year seedlings, just started this year, they're looking wonderful. So they should bloom for me next season. I actually have a group of 3 as well, right underneath the autumn moon Japanese maple. And as we head to this side of the garden, in front of the shed beds, the hedge of the little lime hydrangeas has its fall color now. So this is the rest of the pink. So it's been pink for a little while now, probably since the end of August. They turned their beautiful shades of pink, and now they're starting to fade into that shade of what I like to call golden bronze. It's more of a brown coloring when they get fully dry. My annuals are still working their hearts out. They're looking beautiful. They are really enjoying this very mild fall that we're having. It's been relatively warm for fall, only a couple of cool evenings, but lots of rain, which is keeping everything pretty happy. The Mandevilla here is still blooming. It still has lots of buds. The Dracaena spike still looks really nice. And I'm actually thinking that I might try to overwinter them this year. I did overwinter them once before and I felt like they took a really long time to start blooming the following season. But because it was quite expensive to buy all of these annuals this year, I might give it another try. But also my ferns that I overwintered are looking lovely. So I'm gonna have to show you these. I cannot believe how big they have gotten. And I attribute that 100% to the amount of rain that we got this year. Ferns absolutely love moisture. Look at these things. They are huge. Now, I don't know if I will overwinter these again this year for the simple fact that they do drop a lot of foliage when they are overwintered indoors. Ferns like lots of moisture, lots of humidity, and my basement tends to get a little bit dry for them. And so for that reason, I don't know if I'll be able to overwinter them this year, but they're really easy to overwinter typically. And you can see here that they came back beautifully from last winter. I actually have one more thing I want to highlight in this bed here. This I recently purchased on a trip to a local nursery, and it's called Ascot Rainbow Euphorbia. So it's usually hardy to a zone 7 and I'm in a zone 6B, but the nursery did tell me if I mulch well around it with some leaves that it should make it back next season. And I really hope so because it's really beautiful. Look at the color on this. It's yellow and green variegated, and the new growth gets a little bit of pink coloring. It's a really cool plant. I only bought one so that I can see how it does in my garden, and if it returns, I might think about adding a couple more. Here in the corner of this bed, I have a really beautiful hardy hibiscus called Perfect Storm. It's by Proven Winners, and every August it gives me the most beautiful and large pink and white dinner-sized plate blooms. It is gorgeous, but right now it's also having really pretty fall color, and it has shades of red and yellow. And pretty soon, once all of this fall color is gone, all of the leaves are going to start to crisp up and fall off. And when they do, at that point, I will go ahead and I will cut this shrub back. I will cut it right down, and I'll just leave a little stub of each stem at the bottom because hibiscus are really late to break dormancy in the spring, or actually in late spring, early summer. And I always worry about whether or not the shrub is going to come back. And so for that reason, I like to leave a little stub so I know exactly where it is and where I should expect it to pop through the soil. That is that. And recently, a friend of mine who is a gardener in my garden club had given me or shared with me some of her hardy mums. Now, this is a true perennial mum called Sheffield, and it has a really pretty light pink apricot coloring. And it just started blooming for me. There's a couple of blooms that are open, but lots of buds. And this was also just transplanted a couple of months ago, and it's doing really well. Now this spreads pretty well from what I understand, so it should fill out this area over the next couple of years. And you can see there, I still have some really pretty blooms from my anemones. They're looking really pretty. That variety there is called Honorine Jobert. This is a really pretty tree as well. It is a magnolia, and it is called Dr. Merrill Magnolia. We've had this tree here for about 5 years now. About 5 years, I think, since about 2018. So it's doing really well. It's grown quite a bit, and it also gets really pretty fall color. It will turn all yellow shortly. In fact, some of the leaves are already starting to turn on the inside. And right underneath the shade of this magnolia, I recently planted a Hakonakloa, a Japanese forest grass called All Gold. And I think that this will be a really nice addition in this corner because it'll offer a little bit of brightness to this shady spot. Okay, let's move over to my patio bed now and see what's going on over there. And here in my patio bed, things are looking pretty tired at the moment, especially the perennials. They're mostly done blooming, with the exception of this really pretty anemone that I added just this season. This is another white variety, and this one has double petals. It is called Whirlwind. And it doesn't show any signs of slowing down anytime soon because it still has a good amount of buds on it. I like how tall it is and the contrast of the white bloom with the red maple right behind it. And something new that I'll be adding to this bed in just a week or two, I'm going to try to get these planted, some boxwood. I actually picked up these 7 boxwood at the beginning of the season, and I've been holding on to them all summer long. And finally, it is nice and cool out, and I will be working on getting these planted. I wanted to add some more evergreen interest to this bed, and I also wanted to add something that would have a structural element. My goal is to shape these boxwoods into small balls or sphere shapes, and the variety that I picked out stays pretty compact. It is called Green Gem Boxwood. And another great thing about boxwood is that they can take part sun or sun, and they're deer resistant, which is a definite must in my garden. And you can see here that they're rated to have an average size of 2 by 2 and hardy to zone 4. And it shows as deer resistant. So I'm really excited to get these planted and to see how they grow over time, and just to have this structure here over the winter. I only had 2 things that provided winter interest in this bed, or 2 shrubs. It was my gold mop cypress and my standard or lollipop form blue spruce. So with the addition of the boxwood, I think it'll be a great addition.
And these.
Oh yes, my cameraman George just reminded me that I actually do have another really pretty plant in this bed that offers some winter interest. It is this sweet flag ogon, this acorus, which is a grass-like perennial. It is stunning. It has the most vibrant yellow coloring. And unlike carex that bunnies are sometimes attracted to, nothing seems to eat on these in my garden. So they're evergreen, and they seem to be pretty deer and rabbit resistant. And they stay this vibrant yellow all year round. They get brighter when the temperature is cooler, like in the spring and in the fall, and they get a little bit paler winter and summer, but they really prefer a moist soil that is cool. And this bed is pretty moist, so they're really happy here. Okay, let's move on to another shrub that is looking really beautiful this time of year. On the other side of the house there. But my zinnias also kind of went really long this year. These are annuals, so they're gonna die as soon as the first frost comes. And they have started to get a little bit of powdery mildew, and the leaves are looking worse for the wear. But they're still producing blooms. This is the Queen Lime Orange. It's a really pretty variety. And this is a Polar Bear White. And even this really beautiful purple one, I think it's called Emperor Purple Prince, has a really large bloom. But I'm happy to have had them bloom for this long, we're heading into Halloween week. It's going to be Halloween in a few days, and to have zinnia blooms still blooming is just such a treat. Okay, let's go check out that shrub that I mentioned. Here on the south side of my house, I have a number of shrubs planted, mostly evergreens, but I have a couple of deciduous shrubs, and one that is really beautiful for fall interest is this one here. This is the Proven Winners Pearl Glam Beauty Berry. And while it doesn't have all of its berries yet, it is starting to have really beautiful purple berries. Look at that. This shrub has dark foliage. It gets these tiny little white bloom clusters that then turn into these really pretty purple berries. So if you're looking to add fall interest to your garden, the Pearl Glam Beauty Berry is a real pretty one. And now we're at the front of the house where I have some other borders, and we're gonna go through and just take a look at some of the things that are still looking nice. I'll be honest, things are looking pretty rough at this point in the fall, but there's still a couple of things to look at. The other Fire Glow Japanese maple that I have is right up here. I have 2 of them in total, and it's looking more burgundy now in fall. But it looks really pretty with the backdrop of this Colorado blue spruce. The blue coloring on that evergreen is just so vibrant that it really just sets things off. And of course, this little cutie here, which I always show in my garden tours because it is so cute. It's a small evergreen called a Nana Lutea Hinoki Cypress. Has a really pretty golden color, and it stays really compact.
About 2 feet tall.
I want to say it's about 2 feet, just under 2 feet, 20 to 24 inches right now, and maybe 12 to 18 inches wide. But that has been planted there for about 3 years and it hasn't grown a whole lot.
Nope.
And another thing that's looking really pretty and golden is my candy corn spirea. Now this is a deciduous shrub, so it will start losing its leaves any day now, but this is a shrub that gets such a beautiful variety of color. It starts in very late winter, early spring with some red leaves, and then they kind of turn orange before turning chartreuse yellow and green with pink tips. I mean, it's just a really pretty and compact. It's classified as dwarf, so it's a really compact size spirea. And then it gets really pretty pink clusters of blooms in late spring, early summer, just a really pretty one. So if you have a small space that you want to add a spirea, the candy corn's a good one. So this bed, not much else to look at, to be honest. So let's walk over to the other main walkway bed where the Gomphrena is still showing off. Sometimes at the end of the season, plants are just not ready to go to bed yet. It's kind of like a toddler that you want to put to bed and they're not ready. Well, the same thing is happening with this hibiscus. This is a Luna white hibiscus, and I just noticed that it's giving me some bonus blooms. That's always fun. But as we head over to the front porch, my containers are looking a little bit worse for the wear at this point. They have run their course and I think they're just tired. While they're still blooming, they are starting to look a little bit, you know, like they're turning yellow, the leaves, they look like they want to drop leaves. So I'm going to make a decision as to whether or not I'm going to overwinter this mandevilla at some point this week. But my son wanted to decorate for Halloween. So as you can see, he's added some spooky spiders and even a little guest sitting on a rocker on our front porch. Some dahlias, and this year wasn't a great year for dahlias for me. The ones in my back garden, in my vegetable garden, I think there was too much rain, and so I had a lot of weak stems and so forth. But this year, these little ones that I planted here in the border are still doing fairly well. This variety is either called White Nettie or Blizzard, and a friend shared them with me. And I really like them in this spot, so when I tag them and I store them for winter, I'm going to be sure to indicate that they go in the front walkway so that I can plant them here again this year. Next year, rather. Okay, so moving down the walkway, you can see that my knockout roses are still looking really pretty. They have a lot of, you know, obviously they need to be deadheaded and whatnot, but at this point in the season, you don't want to deadhead your roses because you want to get them ready to go into dormancy. And so if you deadhead, it usually signals the plant to continue producing blooms. So I'm just going to let them go at this point, but being that we are in end of October and they're still blooming is just an indicator of how prolific the knockout roses are. They're actually the only rose that does well for me in my garden. This variety is called Double Pink, and it starts blooming somewhere at the end of May, beginning of June, and it just blooms and blooms. It has a little lull at the end of July, and then it picks right back up. Let's not overlook the Gomphrena. So this is the second year in a row that I've been growing Gomphrena from seed. And I have to say that it is certainly one of my favorites for the front of this border. I start these from seed. I start some from through the winter sowing method. I've started some just by putting them in pots, little small pots, 4-inch containers at the beginning of May, and they really start going when it heats up. So in July, I usually plant out the seedlings somewhere in the beginning of June, and then by July, they've started to put on a good amount of growth, and by August, they start looking like this, nice and full, and they just get fuller and fuller, August, September, and look at them in October. I love the way they spill over the walkway. I will say that I do think that I preferred the atomic purple Gomphrena that I grew last season, just because they were more vibrant and they were a bit more visible from the street. The white was a little bit harder to notice, but once they filled out and they had this many blooms on them, they also provided a pretty show. I have another candy corn spirea right over here in front of my Boulevard cypress, and this one is a little bit larger than the other one, but also looking really pretty and contrasts beautifully with the blue evergreen. The Gomphrena will probably get pulled out in the next few weeks. I'm hopeful that I'll be able to maybe add some tulips in the front of this border before the ground freezes. So if that happens, if I'm able to pick up some tulips, if I find a good deal on end of season clearance tulips, that's when I'll pick them up. I try not to spend full price on tulips because I deal with deer in my garden, and so it's always a risk when I plant out tulips. So for that reason, I like to buy them at a good price. Then I won't feel so bad if they get taken out by the deer. Here is the Carly Rose grass that I planted with you guys a few weeks back. It's also looking really pretty. And I think this will be a nice addition in this corner. It starts off with these really pretty pink blooms. They have a pink hue to them, and now they're aging to a bit of a wheat color or a tan. But grasses are wonderful to add to the garden for late season interest. The texture against other plants just looks really pretty. And in this bed here, it is pretty much tired at this point too, but it has a hedge of 5 bobo hydrangeas planted here, and these bobos did really beautifully this year. They bloomed really pretty in the summer, and even up until a week ago they had a really pretty mauve pink coloring to them, and at this point they've started to go brown and the foliage has started to turn yellow. In the front of the bobos, I have a hedge, or a drift, I guess you would say, a drift of some ageratum. And this variety is called Blue Horizon. And it was started from seed by my friend Catherine, who's also a gardener. And I've been lucky that she's shared some with me for 2 years in a row, and I absolutely love them. And in the front of this ageratum, I grew some zinnias from seed that were a shorter zinnia. They were really beautiful. I had a nice border of them in the front of this bed here, and they're called Raspberry Ripple, Zahara Raspberry Ripple Zinnia. They were a pink and white striped zinnia, and they bloomed really well. And just recently they started to kind of get, you know, this aged look to them where they're just pretty much dying for the season. They're just done. That's the thing with annuals. They will grow from seed and they'll bloom their heads off for the season, and then they're generally just done. By the time the cold arrives, they're done. And the other anemone that I added to this bed this year, the Honorine Jobert, is also still blooming really pretty. This one still has lots of blooms on it. I added 2, one on either side of this weeping blue spruce. And this is the bed that we were just looking at from the other side. This is the back side of the bed that faces our driveway, and you can see we have a retaining wall here. But I want to show you this Japanese maple. This is a red lace leaf Japanese maple, and I'm not sure the variety because this was one that we got really early on. And what happened was the first year that we planted this tree, it had significant dieback. So much dieback that we actually thought it was gone. So what we did was we dug it up and we put it in a planter, and we kind of sat it next to our trash can, to be honest. And we left it there for months, and it was getting watered by the rain and so forth. And then one day we went to throw out the trash and we noticed that it had some new growth, which was amazing. So it just goes to show that plants want to grow, and Japanese maples in particular I have found to be more hardy than they look. So if that ever happens to you, just put it in a planter, watch it for a little while, and it may just come back to life. So that actually concludes the end of our October garden tour. I'm sad to see that the season is coming to a close, but it will give us a couple of months to rest. I might be able to get one more garden tour in before the end of the season, but as you can see, things are looking pretty tired. But I hope that you enjoyed taking a look around, and I hope that you are still able to get out in your garden and do a few things to finish out the season. So thank you for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.